Alright guys, so there has been some request to do a video of this new KRX 1000 lifted edition. I'm putting new in air quotes because just like every other manufacturer, we really rarely get meaningful updates. It's usually just some bullshit plastic parts. And of course that is the case here. So we're going to go through the specs. I'm going to give you my opinion on it. First of all, the KRX is not a great mud machine. I work on a few of them and they're really heavy. They're really long. They ride really smooth, like in whoops and dunes and stuff. But I say they're not a great mud machine just because they're kind of underpowered for the weight and the size, and the drive line is not super waterproof. They go through carrier bearings like crazy on the rear end of the drive shaft. The U-joint splines aren't sealed very well. They're just kind of, you know, Polaris-y the way that stuff's built. I've seen the rear axle splines completely wear off the axles because there's no seal there. So if you're going to mud ride one of these, you got to do a lot of maintenance. You got to grease your splines a lot, and you got to keep an eye on that carrier bearing. Um, Other than that, I think they're pretty good machines. I haven't bought one myself yet, just because the power to weight ratio is kind of bad. But anyway, we got on the specs for this lifted edition, which by the way isn't lifted. If you look at it here, the CV angles are the same as the other one. I don't know why they're calling it a lifted edition. It doesn't really make any sense. It's got 1 inch bigger tires than a standard KRX. So the standard one comes on 31 carnivores, I think. This comes on 32 cryptids. The cryptids are not a particularly good mud tire. Everyone with the OEM Can-Am ones will tell you that. You got to upgrade to something better like an Outlaw or an Aztec. These things are mediocre at best as a mud tire, especially in the sandy, swampy stuff we have. They kind of just dig holes. So I think they definitely could have picked a better tire, but whatever. So let's go down here. The two things that they're advertising is got an elevated dual snorkel air intake CV exhaust. I'm not sure why they're calling it dual snorkel because there's 3 snorkels. So if you look at it here, these are your, I think this is your engine intake, this is your belt intake, and this is your exhaust. It does like a U, kind of like Can-Am. The KRX is almost factory snorkeled on the base model. All that needs to be really raised up is the belt exhaust. But it does have some big molded pieces here, and they've got them up real high. One thing I see looking at this is it's really going to block your view looking out the back. Not that you could really see out the back of these anyway, but that's going to be kind of annoying for people that like to look over their shoulder. Um, I'm sure they also raise up the vent lines somewhere. I don't have any information about where those vent lines are, but everything else looks the same. They just kind of change this in between bed piece to have the snorkels go up a little higher, and they raise up the belt exhaust. So yes, it is snorkeled, which is cool. A factory snorkel KRX is definitely cool, definitely needed. The belt exhaust is way too low on the Sport. Now if we go down here, we look at the suspension. We can actually compare this side by side. Let me go ahead and set that up. Doop, doop. All right, so now we've got the base model and the lifted edition side by side. We'll just go through the specs because that's what you guys like apparently. Yep, all this is the same. We got a power, which is ironic because under power, they do not tell you the horsepower. What? They tell us the torque because I guess that's good, but they don't tell us the horsepower because I guess it's bad. 11.5 to 1 pressure ratio. All this is the same. There's nothing in here to indicate that they put lower gearing in it. It doesn't really need it with the mud tires. These things are already geared crazy low, and they do have a front locker. Capability, as you'd expect, same shocks. Instead of the Showas that come on the base model, the lifted edition has some Fox 2.5s, 24 position compression dampening adjustment, whereas the other ones have 24 position compression dampening adjustment. Oh, that's the same. Travel's the same, 18.6 and 21.1. So I'm not really sure why they went from Fox to Showas, but regardless, they're pretty similar setup. Tires, 32s on 15s, whereas the base model has 31s on 15s, so nothing earth-shattering there. Let's look at ground clearance. This is the one number that should change a lot, right? Oh, it's a lifted edition. It's going to have more ground clearance. It says 15 inches max, 14.4 standard. So I assume max means if you were to increase the preload to the maximum range that was allowed in the owner's manual, they always give you a range of sand, you could get up to 15 inches, but it comes at 14.4. If we look over here, it's 14.8 and 14.2. So you got zero point 0.2 inches more ground clearance, guys. That's less than a quarter of an inch. 0.25 would be a quarter of an inch. So why are you guys calling it lifted if it's the same height? Like, this is just crap marketing like everyone else, I guess. Fuel tank size is the same, turning radius is the same, cargo bed dimensions, you guessed it, they're the same. Cargo bed capacity, the same. Payload capacity, same. It's the same thing. It's just got some snorkels on it, which I'm not saying that's not cool. It's definitely cool, but calling it a lifted edition is kind of stupid. Um, Overall length, it's 2.9 inches longer or 2.8 inches longer somehow. Maybe that's like a winch mount or something. Oh, it's this bumper probably. Yeah, it's got a bumper on it. Whoopee, who cares? Um, okay, curb weight. This one is 1,900 pounds, which is already heavy. This sucker's right at 2,000. So they added 100 pounds of tires, and they didn't even select a very good tire. So yeah, additional features: elevated snorkel, fender flares, front bumper, tow hooks, steel skid plates. I think the other one has steel skid plates too. Yeah, they both have steel skid plates, and you got a winch. Okay, so that right there is what you're getting. The most important thing is what's the price. So we're 24,000, and this is 21,200. So what are you getting for your $2,800? You're getting a snorkel kit, a front bumper, and a winch. If that's worth it to you, great. If it's not worth it to you, buy the base model, put some better tires on it, do your own exhaust snorkel. That's my opinion. Not really excited about this thing. I wish they'd have picked some better tires.